Connie Jameson, just the way I like her, up close and personal. Connie Jameson.
After several years of teaching at Sunshine School, a school for physically and multi-handicapped children, I was making a change. I had taught a readiness class of physically handicapped children. Those are the ages preschool through kindergarten. Oh my goodness, it was great. They were such fun. But a new program was being started, a special day class of physically handicapped students, kindergarten through third grade, the primary grades, and they would be housed on a regular elementary campus. Well, I volunteered to be the teacher of that group. I thought it was a good idea. I thought it was a good idea for the physically handicapped students and for the regular ed students. But I wanted to be sure that my students were integrated as much as possible. I didn't want us to just be occupying one of the classrooms there on the campus, but I wanted as much interaction as possible between my students and the regular ed students. So I had a plan. We were going to get up close and personal. And to do so, I invited one of the elementary classrooms, one of the regular classrooms, one at a time, to come and visit us. So when they would come, and it was usually our first grade classroom, my students would be lined up in a row, and the classroom visiting would come and sit on the carpeting facing us. So we were up close and personal. That would give me the opportunity to introduce myself, to introduce my aides, the equipment that they would see our students using, such as braces, walkers, wheelchairs, and so forth. And of course, most importantly, to introduce my students one by one and tell something special about them. They got to meet, for example, Alex, who was a very smart little boy, confined to a wheelchair. And even though he was very smart, he could read, he could understand, he could not talk. So on his wheelchair tray was a communication board, and I explained how that would work. Nowadays, there'd be all kinds of technological advances, I'm sure, in the communication. But then it was a board with words and letters, and I taught the students how they could communicate with Alex by pointing to the choices, and Alex would blink his eyes, or I believe that's what he used, but there were ways that we could get messages back and forth. They met Annette, a beautiful young girl who was paralyzed from the neck down due to an accident. So she was in a standing type wheelchair. And even though she could talk and she understood all the lessons, she could not, of course, use her hands to write. She was learning to write with a pencil in her mouth. They have mouth artists, and she would be able to write and to draw in that manner. And I must tell you about Gustavo. Oh my goodness, Gustavo had to wear a helmet. He had braces, he used a walker. He would maybe try to talk, but it would be very difficult to understand him. However, Gustavo was a little magnet. Students were drawn to him. He had the biggest smile, the most positive attitude, that with all these challenges he faced, kids were just gathered around him, enjoying him, and of course, Gustavo enjoying them. In fact, I found him so inspiring. I once gave a speech called "Go Get 'Em, Gus." I figured that once the students got to know my classroom of individuals as individuals, then they would also realize the personalities of the students. And they would find out that Michael, oh, he should be a social director. He was a chatterbox, and he loved to know what was going on, very curious about everybody and everything. Or Kira, who was rather quiet and shy, but had a wicked sense of humor, so people loved to be around her. Yes, the students would get to know them, the person, as far as the way they looked and moved and acted and communicated, but also the personality, and find out that just like in their classes, quite a wide range of personalities, it was the way with my class as well. I also made sure that I talked about safety, especially with the wheelchair, so my students would be safe on campus, and the regular ed students would know about the rules, especially during recess times. I pointed out that when they were in the cafeteria, they might see some of my students being fed by the aides, because obviously they couldn't use their hands to do so themselves. And that we had a special bathroom because some of our students needed help in the bathroom, and that was one of the jobs of the aides. What I found is that students can be so accepting, so matter of fact about these things if it's just pointed out to them. In all my years of teaching the special ed students on the regular campus, I was never aware of any teasing, of any negativity toward my group. I pointed out that I thought it was a good situation for us and for the regular ed students. So let me share about John. I had an upper grade teacher, one of the 4th, 5th, or 6th grade teachers, who came and said, could we try having John be a helper in your classroom? Because he was always in trouble on the playground. And he would just have to sit out because he was frustrating all the kids and all the playground supervisors. So I said, let's give it a try. John was a helper. Coming to our classroom during his recess time, he was caring, he was helpful, he was responsible, he was creative, he was appreciated, he was a cool kid to my students. John got to see himself as a different person because of that situation. Nowadays, I think we need more and more chances to get up close and personal, because just as back those decades ago, it helped students to see one another as individuals, as persons, rather than a group of people. I think this is so important. And we know that Toastmasters does that for us. My life is enriched by the wide range of individuals that I've met. And I think once we learn through speeches or table topics about one another, that we see one another as more alike than different, and the differences between us as making us more unique and interesting. So back in with my special ed students, and here in the today and now, let's all work to get up close and personal. Back to you, Tom.